The second season of Mirzapur has attracted a lot of attention like the first one. But if you are constantly being exposed to its male cast, we're going to do something different here. We're going to talk about the women of Mirzapur. There are many strong opinions on the representation of the female characters in the series. Many believe that this is a very, very male, masculine series, a kind of testosterone-driven depiction of characters as it captures the underbelly of India's heartland. But the female characters may not be looking at themselves quite that way. And the second season has made a distinct departure from the first in how it handles its women characters. Joining me now are two of the finest actors of our time, Shweta Tripathi and Rasika Dugal, extremely talented, emerging and having, I would say emerging is also a patronizing word, stars of their time. So thank you, Rasika and Shweta. It's a pleasure talking to both of you. I want to ask, I'll start with you, Rasika. Do you see yourself in the way that much of the outside world looks at Mirzapur? I read so many feminist debates around the depiction of the women characters, and especially after the first season, there were those who argued that there was not enough agency given to your characters, that this was very much a male gaze at the world.
When I read season 1, I was actually pleasantly surprised because I felt that there was an attempt, at least on paper, and there was an intent to write a character, especially for Beena Tripathi, the character I play, a woman who has sexual agency, whose desire is acknowledged. And I felt that was very nicely written. But I don't know how it's perceived and the kind of comments that people give online, which sort of starts influencing other people's reactions to what they've seen. And that's never in my hands. But I do feel that as creators, as makers and actors, we are as much a part of this patriarchal world. Therefore, we have to constantly question how we visualize women. And because I feel like the distance between the written word and the visual is a very, very long one. And it's a very difficult journey to take. And I feel our references for women are so sexualized that it's often very hard to reimagine that. And therefore, even if your intention is to write a story or write a character who has sexual agency, there is a very thin line between visualizing that and visualizing something which sexualizes, So I think that's a question that we have to constantly ask ourselves and constantly check ourselves on that. And I think those are good questions to ask. Now, वो जो इतने सालों से जो references हम देख रहे हैं, वो एक दिन में तो गायब नहीं हो जाएगा. वो हमारे अंदर इतनी है जितना viewer के अंदर है. So whether it is how we visual perception, because people view it with their own idiosyncrasies or their own prejudices, I don't know. So yeah.
No, I completely agree with you कि हम सब में एक spectrum है, and life is, rose a kind of negotiation with the patriarchy that subliminally influences you. But आपके character के बारे में खासकर there's been a lot of commentary on the sexual agency, yes, because your character does have affairs outside of marriage, but there's been a lot of intrigue about the fact that this sort of otherwise zabardast sort of female character who speaks about being left cold during sex with her husband in one of the most famous dialogues, ki thanda chhod diya, garam karke thanda chhod diya, the unsatisfactory sex that sometimes can take place in a marriage, does not have agency in standing up to abuse. So there is that kind of gray zone there where her marriage seems almost abusive, but she has a lot of agency when it comes to sexual desire. Do you see that as contradictory, or do you in fact see that as a story of so many women we know in real life?
I do see that as a story of so many women we know in real life. And actually, when I read the script, it was very heartbreaking, that part of the story. And I think the journey from there, from the point of being violated, being humiliated, and Beena Tripathi starts season 2 at that point. And I think what they've done very beautifully in season 2 is not chosen to ignore the journey from feeling humiliated and violated to reaching a point where she finds herself again. So she is a survivor. So that story is there, and that's what I find very nuanced and very interesting about season 2. And I totally enjoyed sort of living that journey. And then it gets on to a story about revenge and how a lot of her motivations are because of that. But I think this part of the story is sort of addressed in season 2 in a very beautiful way.
Yeah. Shweta, sexual desire or female desire specifically, I think it's very much a big part of both of your characters. So there's, the whole sort of uh, masturbation scene when it comes to your character. And, given how much Aswara Bhaskar was trolled when she tried to depict that on screen, given the kind of misogyny that she had to confront in real life, I'm just wondering how people have reacted to you in real life. Is there a kind of judgment? Is there a kind of hodgy moment, when it comes to, like, it's one thing, when someone doesn't know you, but the moment they're dealing with you as a real person, people don't want to hear women talking about masturbation.
So something that I really felt bad and felt disappointed was that the introduction scene and the fact that and if there are any intimate that are you okay with it, and obviously you can discuss it with the writer and so when they told me about the scene, I was like, oh, like that's it. So what's the big deal? And they're like, yeah, you're cool with it. I'm like, yeah, and I will speak to the director about it. And it wasn't a big deal at all in my head. And I think that credit goes a lot to the kind of upbringing we've had as girls. That yeah, hai hi nahi. But what was sad was that I had completely forgotten about the scene. And during our interviews for season 1, there were males and there were female journalists who were giggling and who made me feel like I have done something wrong. And then there were these lists of female actors who masturbated on screen, and I just didn't understand where this is coming from, because I feel you're diluting the entire cause, the script, the performance. Like there's so many other scenes, and trust me, that scene was, in fact, that was the most boring scene to perform, because there is nothing as an actor if you're supposed to feel things all alone, and obviously you're not into too much into character. As simple as Golu sitting and having a cup of coffee, doing that scene was as plain and boring as that. I think audience members, they think that when actors do intimate scenes, it's very exciting. But trust me, it's not. It's far, far away from that. And what I will never do anything in my life where my friends and family will say, "Beta, tumne ye kyun kiya?" I'm never going to let them down. But when society, people around you are talking, I feel, what wasn't a big deal for me. I should not feel ashamed or I should not feel scared when my in-laws are watching Mirzapur. I don't want that to happen. I do projects, and I think I can say we do kind of projects that we really believe in, and the kind of stories that need to be told. So जब ये list बनना शुरू हो जाती है, it's very disheartening.
Yeah. But when you say that you would not do something that your family would be embarrassed of, does that influence your choices? Like, are there roles that have come your way where you've said, like, I don't know, my in-laws will watch this and they won't approve, or my parents will watch this and they won't approve? Does that actually influence the choices of things you'd say yes and no to?
Not really, because I think my own filter is so strong that a filter where what I'm wearing or not wearing is more important than what I'm doing. I would not do that. So somewhere I think before marriage, my parents always had that trust in me with my choices, and now even my in-laws, they are the biggest fans of Mirzapur. So if you have so much love and support from your own family and friends, you can go a long way. It gives you that energy. But यही अगर घर पे ये सब सुनने को मिल रहा है ना, it's not easy. I think support begins at home. If you have that with you, I'm not worried about the society talking, because my dad is a nice officer, mom's a teacher, so I'm grown up with a very strong moral compass, and I know for a fact that it is. I do acting because it's my happy place, being in front of the camera, and I would choose a Masan, a Haramkhor, Mirzapur, Lakhon Mein Ek season 2 again and again over any so-called commercial films or big-scale films.
Yeah. So that's what I want to ask both of you. When I was introducing you, and I bit my tongue because I didn't want to use this cliche of these emerging stars, because I do think you're both established actors and you are stars. But there's something shifting in your industry. There's a whole generation of new brands, for lack of a better word, who are more outspoken, who thoda hatke, who speak their mind, who do a different kind of I would say, role. Do you find a generational shift? Do you find it easier, Rasika, to be a person who can speak her mind in contrast to the much more socially conservative, politically conservative film industry that you represent?
No, actually, I actually find this environment generally, and not in the film industry per se, very difficult for anybody to speak their mind actually, because it does not, the immediacy and frequency of conversations and generally prompted by the kind of conversations that we tend to have on social media, I feel that there is no room for an actual conversation. And therefore, I feel that there's a lot of posturing, there's a lot of virtue signaling, there's a lot of checking the boxes while saying something politically correct. But there's also a time in our society where I feel it's never been polarized more than this, at least in the time that I remember it. I remember the time of my college days as a time where we could have more genuine conversations, where we were listening to each other, where being on two different sides of a political argument did not mean that you cannot have a conversation, And I find that we are extremely polarized to the extent that there seems to be no room for any kind of conversation. So I find these times actually the hardest.
Yeah, but what does that mean for you in real life? Like, have you lost friends? Is the industry, like there are questions I always asked about why this industry is not as argumentative or expressive openly. It might be very much privately in private conversations as, let's say, Hollywood. So what has this done for you, this polarized times? Has it cost you friends? Has it cost you relationships? Is there just a pact ki politics mein discuss karenge? How does it work?
I think the lack of engagement. I think I would not make the attempt today to engage in a conversation with somebody who I know is on the opposite side of a political view. Because, I think there's a lot of fatigue of doing that over the last 6-7 years. And that, I think, is something that I try to check myself on. I feel very heartbroken about it because I feel like, yaar, aisa time hota tha ki hum sab ek saath baith ke baatein karte the, and theek hai if you didn't agree on something. And I think we've all sort of become more extreme in our own views also because of the support that you sort of seem to get for it on social media constantly, right? So it becomes difficult to check yourself on your own extremity, no matter what side you are on, and to really engage in a conversation.
Yeah.
So I think I've backed out of a lot of conversations I would have very actively engaged in.
I know exactly what you mean. But speaking about the whole sort of feminist dilemma, being in the industry, struggling with your own boundaries, Shweta. Your character, for example, has a gun in her hand this time. The sort of the action scenes have always typically belonged to the guys. There are people who ask why you don't get as more airtime. How have all of you resolved those dilemmas, the equal pay for equal work questions, not doing certain things that you believe stereotype, women even further, at least not doing them consciously? What are some of your dilemmas on an everyday basis as a sort of thinking young woman?
So I think when it comes to pay parity, I think it's very important to realize that we are a society, a country which is so inspired and motivated by stars. And most of these stars are men. So now, Kalko, if I'm doing a commercial film with an A-lister, I need to be very aware that the people are coming to watch him. I'm going to benefit a lot from this entire setup. And of course, when I come into any project, I'm hoping that the project also benefits a lot from me. But I think it's very important to realize and get your worth. अब your worth for me, it's not a competition कि इसमें अली को ज़्यादा पैसे मिले, देवेंद्र को मिले, रसिका को मिले या पंकज त्रिपाठी को मिले या मुझे मिले. For me, as long as I am getting my worth, I'm happy. I'm really, this might sound like a boring or very diplomatic answer, but the thing is, I don't want to be in competition with anybody else. It is, if I think this price is justified, I'm going to do it. Even screen time, like I know for a fact, and in fact, we discussed it with the makers, that even Mirzapur season 1, the women weren't screen time wise, weren't there enough, and they agreed. And that's why even season 2 has become what it has. But also it's very important to work with the kind of people who will understand that, who are on the same wavelength, which again I feel very fortunate to be working with such people that अगर screen time कम भी है, but जिस तरह से बीना का, स्वीटी का, गोलू का किरदार डिटेल में समझाया गया कि वो कम टाइम है, लेकिन उस कम टाइम में भी there is a lot of depth. So I rather work with people who are giving me that depth than with people who are giving me the screen time, but there is, there are no colors or there are no layers.
Yeah. Rasika, do you think women make films differently from men? And I ask you this because, I'm sometimes asked, do women journalists cover stories differently from men? And when I was younger, I wanted to say no. I wanted to completely disown the gender dimension. But, in my 40s, I feel a comfort in saying, yes, actually, I think while I hate generalizations, I do find that there is a gaze that is different. When I went to cover a war, I told the stories of the soldiers. The guys told the stories of the hardware. They told the stories of the guns and the rocket launchers, and I told the stories of the soldiers. And there seemed to be a kind of gendered prism there. So I'm just wondering if this was a woman looking at Mirzapur, would she have made it differently? Would your characters have been different?
I would say no. I don't think that men and women tell stories differently, because I've had the opportunity to work with some lovely, very sensitive male directors. Richie Mehta is a great example. Richie Mehta, who wrote and directed Delhi Crime.
Yes.
But I have to say that, and it's possibly because of my own prejudice, because of my own bias, that I feel that when I'm approaching a subject jiska politics thoda damadol ho sakta hai, I feel more reassured when I'm working with a woman. I feel more reassured. I might be misplaced. I might not be right. But I somehow feel more comfortable that the gaze will be feminist, that the gaze will not be male, so will not be masculine. So that's, I always feel like that. I might not always be right though. But I have to say that I feel more comfortable then, but I'm acknowledging my own bias and my own prejudice in this.
Sure. No, and of course, women are as much products of, men can be feminist and women can be misogynistic, because it's all coming from the same macro culture. I have to ask you in the end, and I'm sorry our conversation is so short, but I've got this news interview to run to. What has been the toughest thing for you, Shweta and Rasika? The same question to both of you. In this journey so far, what has been the toughest about being a woman in the film industry?
I have been blessed, and I have worked with people and teams, cast and crew, both. They have been so supportive, right from Anurag Kashyap to Guneet Monga, be it Excel or be it Tikya. I think it really depends on the kind of projects also that you associate yourself with. So my journey, again, I've not had any difficulty because I'm a girl. I have had difficulty because I am choosy. Because my first film, which was Haramkhor, Nawaz Bhai had said to me that kuch actors ko to choosy hona chahiye. And that was stuck in my mind. So there are days and weeks and months that I'm just sitting in frustration and waiting for the right kind of project to come. But when it comes, it's so satisfying that I don't mind waiting again. So it's, as a woman, thankfully, but I know there are people out there and female actors out there who face a lot of things, and I always tell them that just because I've not experienced something, that doesn't nullify their experience, and I will always be there to stand up with them and for them.
So Rasika, wrap this up from us. This is a backdrop of a ferocious Me Too debate, whether it's at an inflection point. There are all kinds of fault lines in the gender conversation of this country. There's been a gang rape in Hathras. There's class and caste and the intersection of that. You as a woman in the industry representing women, are there certain no-go decisions for you? Are there certain things you'll never do?
So, this is one question which is always very difficult for me is, as an actor, you never have control over the politics of the project. Yeah. You have control over what you're doing, and the character that you're playing could have politics which is very different from yours, and that's fine, and that's even exciting to an artist. I mean, I would love to play a right-wing troll, for example, but just to extend yourself to be able to understand what goes on in another mind, and that's very exciting for an artist. But as an actor, you don't have control over the overall politics of a project. So when you read it and you make certain choices, they might not turn out like that. And that's what I find very difficult and I find very challenging. I would be heartbroken to be a part of a project which has very flawed gender politics. And I'm always worried about that, So, or any other kind of politics. So yeah, that's one dilemma that I continue to have.
Well, I wish we could talk longer, so we'll do this another time. But in the meantime, male or female, these are two of the finest actors of our time. Do watch them in Mirzapur Season 2. Rasika and Shweta, we're going to have another conversation about life sometime soon. Thank you. Thank you very much. And I'm sorry to wrap this up so soon, but just news beckons, so I've got to run. Thank you very much and take care and all the best.
Thank you.
Bye.